Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We want to give folks some time to filter in and make sure that my team's all primed for questions and such. So give us just a minute. Know that we are going to start with a presentation. This is all going to be recorded, of course. The presentation will be probably about 15 minutes, and then we will have plenty of time for questions that we will take through the Q&A. So please, I recommend generally hold off until we get through the presentation because we might answer your question and then put things into the Q&A. And we've got my colleagues are here to help us get through those and answer those. But like I said, we're going to wait just a few minutes to allow folks to filter in before we start our presentation. And again, this will be recorded. So thanks for being here. We appreciate you. All right, folks, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here for our waitlist information session for housing for this upcoming year. My name is Kate Curnow. I am the program and operations manager for the housing team that runs, we're the team that puts on the application process and a couple of other pieces that we're going to talk about today. So I appreciate having y'all here. We know you probably are feeling really anxious about this, and we're hoping that we can give you some information that'll help you feel a little bit better about what's to come. It's important to note that this is going to be recorded. So please know you'll have a chance to review this. It takes us usually a day or two to get it posted to our website, but you'll be able to find that on the current student application page and actually we'll also text it out to y'all. I know a lot of y'all probably got this message through our text that we sent out today. So first, we're going to start off today talking just a little bit about what it actually means to be on the wait list, what you can expect in terms of movement on the list and accessing it and all those kind of things. Then we'll talk a little bit about off-campus options because not all of y'all will make it off the list. And so we recommend you start looking at some of these things as soon as possible. And we've got some resources and tips for you on that. And we also have a little bit of information to share just about what it means to rent off campus, kind of thinking about the core concerns students express to us about why they want to be on campus and what they're worried about for moving off campus. And then we will have some time for Q&A. Again, we know this is probably where most of y'all have questions and what you're here for to hear. And I know we won't be able to answer all of your questions completely, I think right in this moment, but so bear with us. But while you are on the wait list, you can always log into My Housing and monitor it and see where your number is. If you visit the application summary page, when you go into the application associated with next year, you'll see on the summary page your wait list number. Know that number might not change very much until summer. We often don't see a lot of students canceling off the folks who have housing. We don't see a lot of them canceling until summer when they find out about co-ops and other things. And so the list doesn't usually move until then. So please bear with us and just manage expectations that you might not see a lot of change on it until then. That said, in late March, so later this month, we'll send out the priority consideration request form. And this is a form we encourage you all to fill it out. It's just letting us know that you think you have a reason that we should maybe bump you up on the list and prioritize you getting off of the wait list. I have to emphasize to y'all, this is a request form only. It is just for us to consider. It is not a guarantee that you will get off the wait list. But for the folks who fill it out, depending on how many spaces we end up having available, we'll be able to prioritize the folks who for whatever reason, will need to get housing first. So, and oftentimes that's the folks who have the greatest financial need. Sometimes it also takes the shape of, somebody who's maybe only here for the fall, and we know that we need spaces that would be available in the spring. It is really important to note that housing is really never guaranteed to anyone. If you don't once you have a contract for next year, it's yours. But if you're on the wait list and you think you have a reason that gives you priority, if it didn't come from us, it's just not a guarantee. So do know that, but we do encourage you to fill out that form when it becomes available and let us know what your reason is. So it's also important to note that while you're on the wait list, you can cancel and you can get off of it penalty free. You're not going to pay the cancellation penalty that you might if you are still on or can get a place and then cancel your housing contract later in the year. So while you're still on the wait list, you can get off of it and be totally penalty free with housing. That said, for those of you who do get a spot and are taken off the wait list and given a spot, there's a couple of really important things for you to know if and when that happens. So if you are taken off, you're going to be given a room assignment right away, and you'll need to confirm your spot. You'll be given usually like 48 hours or so. And Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but usually it's a little window of time to let us know that you do want that spot. And if we don't hear back from you, we'll give it to the next person on the list. So it's really important that you check your email and look out for that. And if you get emails from housing, respond to them. If you do get a bed space, it's also possible that it would be in a traditional hall, which is where primarily first years live. Again, sometimes that has to do with us needing spaces to be open for spring for certain first years or what have you. So there's a couple of things that go into that calculus for us. So just know that if you are taken off and get a spot, that may be this kind of spot you're in. Now, you are not going to have a roommate who is a first year in that case, in that instance, but your neighbor certainly would be. So again, really important to check your email regularly over the summer. Again, a lot of this stuff won't start to move or have any kind of effect until the summer. And if your contact information in housing, in My Housing, isn't up to date, particularly your phone number and the email address that you use the most, please make sure that those are in there because we use both those methods to contact you. So next I want to pivot a little bit because, or a lot of it really, because again, not all of y'all are going to make it off the wait list. In past years, we see kind of a wide variety of like some years just a few get off the wait list, and some years like a much greater percentage do. So it really depends on a lot of different things. And with this growing incoming class, we just don't know what that's going to look like yet. So we want to make sure y'all understand the steps for getting off-campus housing. And I promise I have some resources lined up to talk about that'll make you feel better about some of the things that may feel like the biggest obstacles for you in terms of moving off campus. So the first thing you want to do is review the off-campus housing website, and we're going to take a look at that here in just a minute. It is a great website that pulls together all the student-friendly leases in the area. The next important thing to do is to come to the housing fair, and the good news for y'all is that the housing fair is next Tuesday, March 12th, and we'll give y'all the details about that a little later as well. Joining programs to learn about off-campus housing is really also very helpful. You're kind of doing that right now, but also we'll have a Renting 101 workshop next week, and we'll give you the information for that here at the tail end as well. That workshop is a great thing to do if you are going to be moving off campus, and we'll get into a little bit of that here today, and if you like what you see there, make sure you join us for that later program. Once you found a place after doing those first 3 steps, signing your lease is obviously a big important step. So you want to make sure you do that. And we'll talk a little bit here about timing and things to be mindful of when you sign a lease, and doing all that ideally before you've or as you're preparing to move out here at Georgia Tech. Mostly because there's some helpful services that you can take advantage of if you do. So I do want to talk about the housing that is available off campus, because if you've only lived on campus before, you might not know that there's actually a little bit of a spectrum of what housing can actually look like for you. And I know for some folks, for some of you, the barrier or the reason that you want to stay on campus has to do with the wonderful level of support that you get from having RAs, and the proximity and just the kind of general ease that you have in student housing, because a lot of stuff is handled by housing. So it's important to note that there is a lot of student apartment housing nearby Georgia Tech, particularly in Tech Square and like on North Side. A lot of the stuff near right there next, like right next to campus, is going to be specifically student housing. And those student apartments are going to be furnished, meaning you don't have to find your own furniture, or at least not the big pieces. Those pieces are taken care of. Oftentimes utilities are all included, and there's usually just that little bit more support, somewhat like what you have on campus. So if it is your first time moving off campus and you feel like you maybe do want a little bit more support in this first move, I say look at those student apartments first, because those student housing, and again, looking at the ones that are furnished or that have academic leases, those are usually the ones that are the student specific. And in those buildings, it's going to be all Georgia Tech students, maybe with a sprinkling of Georgia State students. There's also quite a few conventional apartment buildings around us, and those are just like typical, full of professionals, other students from other schools potentially, potentially family mix of folks, what have you. And around Georgia Tech, there's such a wide mix of conventional apartment complexes that you really get a wide variety of like big and tall boxes, or like small and a little bit more boutique-y. A lot of these will tend to have a little more in the way of fancy amenities, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Uh, there are also a handful of listings around Georgia Tech that students could live in that are actual houses. They have yards, they have fences, they have, their own singular utilities and all those things. And that is certainly, for many students, is a great fit, and I encourage you to look into that. But it is certainly the style of living that requires kind of the most independence. And is the least likely to find on our site. Again, our site is typically very student-friendly rentals. And there are certainly some that are houses, but we know for a lot of folks, that's not something you're ready for until, maybe your third, fourth, fifth year or grad school. So we talked a little bit about the off-campus website. There's a couple of interesting things to note, just because there are a lot of listings. Right now, I think we have probably more than 40 different properties listed, and some of them have dozens of rooms open, or more than that even, if they're brand new. So I encourage you all to look at that site. It's offcampus.housing.godtech.edu. You see the website down there below. And when you look at it, you can see that you can look at the properties themselves. They're listed on the left, but there's also a great map on the right where you can kind of see where everything is located, how close it is to campus, what transit lines it's located on, things like that. You also are able to filter by just about everything you can think of in your search to find the right apartment for you. So whether it's the size, the number of bedrooms, whether it's an academic lease or a short-term lease or a traditional lease, how close it is to campus, you can even filter to say, like, I only want to look at places that have dog parks, or I only want to look at places that have covered parking or things like that. So it's really nice that you can filter for some of those things that are very particular or that you really want to have. And I will say that's part of the nice thing about moving off campus, is that it does feel like a big step in many ways, but there's usually a lot of cool things that come with it that you certainly don't get on campus, like a rooftop pool. So when you go on to offcampus.housing.godtech, or I'm sorry, offcampus.housing.godtech.edu, you can also sign in. And when you sign in using your Georgia Tech credentials, there's a couple of things you can do. You can certainly like listings and kind of like save favorites and do comparative and all that. And that is certainly a helpful function, I find. But it's also good to know that you can do roommate search and subleasing on this site. And because it's behind that Georgia Tech sign-on, you know that everybody there is going to be a Georgia Tech student that you're dealing with. And I know for a lot of folks that is a big part of what feels nerve-wracking about the move off campus or about subleasing, is like who you're working with. So knowing that it's going to be another Georgia Tech student is a helpful kind of measure of accountability that we really like to have and provide in this site. So it's also worth noting that there is a ton of renter education in this drop down here that's labeled renter education, as well as the guide that's there. It tells you a little bit about kind of each neighborhood, some of the things we're going to talk about here in a second, what to look for when you first move in, to, try to get your deposit back, other tips like that. And really some of the stuff we're talking about today, there's renter education of that kind on this website. So it's a really great resource for students no matter what. And finally, there's also a button there that allows students to submit complaints if there is an issue with their property or their landlord. And because these folks who are listed here are in contract with College Pads, who's the company that does this website, College Pads is our partner. And so they're in partnership with the properties. And if the properties get a certain amount of like enough complaints, we're able to remove them from the site because we get that feedback from students. So knowing that you have that mechanism available to you, if that is part of what you're nervous about for moving off campus, is just knowing that you're dealing with someone in a private contract in this way, know that you have some backing there and you have this ability to provide feedback that's really meaningful. So that's the off-campus website. I highly recommend it. We can certainly open that page up. And I think my colleague is going to drop that link to y'all in response to a question here in a little bit. So I heavily recommend that y'all look at it. It is really a great kind of singular place to find a place that's great for you to rent, because everybody who's on this site has signed on to it saying, I want to rent to Georgia Tech students. So they know what they're getting into. They know what your life is like, sort of. We're working with them to help them be even better property managers to you. So the folks who are on this site, it's just a really great place to start, and everything is kind of in one place. So. Uh, do you want to talk a little bit about the different neighborhoods, because you may not have spent a lot of time off campus, and all of the stuff, the listings that you find on that site tend to fall in these 4 neighborhoods around campus. And you may, I know I talked to a student who was nervous about moving off campus because they thought it was all going to be the like rowdy, lively midtown vibe. And in fact, there's a ton of places to live around campus that aren't quite that same vibe. So, these are like 1-word descriptors that we tend to hear from students about these neighborhoods. But in the Midtown neighborhood over here, on the other side of the highway where you have Tech Square, really a lot of like lively activity, lots of restaurants, lots of bars. You've got public transit as well as Georgia Tech transit running over there. So it's a good time over there. Lots of interesting activity, even late into the night. Home Park is just north of Georgia Tech, along 10th Street and up all the way to Atlantic Station. And that is a far more quiet and residential area. There's not as much like, music pumping and folks walking around like you have in Midtown. It's all homes for the most part. And a lot of them are maybe older and maintained like by private landlords, or certainly a different experience than some of the new build that is all over Midtown. But for some students, again, that's definitely the right fit. It is a lot quieter for sure. West Midtown is here, of course, to the west of campus, and it stretches all the way up along Hell Mill towards sort of like where there's now a Topgolf and other things. And all along North Side in particular, there's a lot of student housing that's been built really just in the last like 3 or 4 years, maybe. So it's a lot of new stuff, and West Midtown in general is growing in huge ways. In the last 10 years, it has just become really hopping and has a lot of cool bars and restaurants and things like that as well. So it's getting really hopping over there. One neighborhood a lot of students don't really think about as being its kind of own thing is down here in Centennial, and that's just the space between campus and downtown. It's not a ton of area, and it is predominantly just 2 apartment complexes that are down there, and one of them is like 90% of that footprint. It's definitely a quieter residential kind of vibe as well, and it feels surprisingly tucked away considering it's between all these kind of busy and happening places. So it's good to know that there are different vibes around campus, and a lot of them are still on bus lines or really walkable or accessible to campus still in terms of transit. So we know for a lot of y'all, the main question and the main thing prohibiting you from moving off campus is cost. And we don't want to minimize that is a real concern. I will say we are lucky somewhat in that there is so much housing being built around Georgia Tech for students that it is keeping costs from being even higher. So it has been good. I've been glad to see that some of the properties we work with have actually lowered their prices by about $50 a month the last couple of months or so, and they anticipate doing that again soon because the market is getting pretty saturated. So for y'all, that can be a really good thing. That said, for a lot of y'all, I think the concern is paying with financial aid, because for a lot of you, that the way that money works, it may make you think that you can't live off campus, but you really can. A lot of students do, and we have some helpful tips that we got from financial aid to make it easier for you to do that. So if you're paying with financial aid, basically what happens is financial aid bill, like, covers your tuition and fees, and all that money goes to your bursar account, and then anything that's left over gets sent to you. There's a couple of different ways it can get sent to you. They can write you a check and other things that come in the mail. The financial aid office heavily recommends you sign up for direct deposit with the bursar's office so that it hits your account immediately. So you have access to those funds as quickly as possible. And that's because that disbursement doesn't usually happen. Y'all may already know this if you've gotten this disbursement before. It typically doesn't happen until after classes start. We are looking at all different like resources and ideas and things that we can look at to help students figure out how to like move in and pay all the upfront costs of move in, knowing that you don't get the disbursement until later. And I don't have great news for you yet, but it is helpful to look at the calendar of disbursement that financial aid has, because you can do some planning based on that. It is also really, really, really important to know that there is a cost of living adjustment form that you can fill out if you get financial aid or scholarship or what have you. This just changes what your cost of attendance is. And again, if you receive that kind of aid, you probably know that your cost of attendance is like the full amount that that your aid can cover. And right now that is based on on-campus housing. So you can fill out this form to make them aware of what your new rent is. And I don't know that they can cover the in total, like the gap completely, but I know that they use this form and are able to make a change based on it. So you definitely want to fill out that form. You definitely want to engage with financial aid. And second, we'll talk about timeline and how that kind of enters into this, because the sooner you fill out this form, the easier your life will be when it comes around, or, comes to moving in and stuff. So let's talk about timeline. We really recommend folks start searching. I mean, it's not too late now. And we're going to have, again, that housing fair next week, and that'll be a great time. But in general, here in Atlanta, you can start looking even in the fall. And a lot of the properties will offer you even bigger incentives, or the rents, like your rent monthly will be a lot lower if you sign up in the fall, because they're really trying to secure those beds. So the incentives are a lot bigger in fall. And they will continue to kind of decline over this spring. So they know we're having this fair next week. I'm hoping that some of them are bringing some sort of like sign up bonus, with them for folks to sign up with them next week, or some other kind of incentive. So the sooner you sign with them, the better in terms of those kind of incentives. And the sooner you sign, the sooner you can fill out that cost of living adjustment form. And again, once that form can work its way through the system, like again, just the sooner the better. That said, we know some of you are going to want to hang on the housing wait lists until July. And we really encourage you to at least look at your options before then. And at least review the website and such, but know that for the most part in the Atlanta market, you can still find a spot off campus in July. I wouldn't wait much later than like mid-July, but our properties typically have a handful of vacancies left at that point. So in terms of your timeline and the cost effect that it has, that's kind of the general picture here in Atlanta. Then when it comes time to actually signing that lease, we talked about, that being a critical step, of course. You really want to make sure you read a lease first. And there's a couple of things we have listed here that are the things to kind of look for that are typically a surprise to a first-time renter. So it's worth noting that for the most part, a lot of the properties that are around Georgia Tech use a standard Georgia renters agreement. So it is it'll be basically the same agreement or lease form for a lot of them. Some of them do have their own like corporate lease form, but generally the terms and the conditions will be generally the same just because of Georgia law and such. It is really important though to pay attention to your lease dates, especially if you have an academic lease. You may be expected to move out like July 31st. And if you're taking classes in summer, you likely don't finish classes until August 2nd. So that we know for students causes some complication, and we're working with some properties, or some of the properties that we work with, have even agreed to do like a couple of day prorate for students who have that need. So to pay attention to your lease dates, communicate with your lease manager. That's a critical one. These other things in terms of like fees and rules and limits, those are things that again may be different than what you're used to from living at home or living in the halls with us. And so we want to make sure you pay attention to them, because some of them can be expensive and surprising again. So it's also important to know that for the most part, most students will need a cosigner, which is just typically a parent or another guardian figure. And this is somebody who just kind of is agreeing that financially they're kind of your backer if it really came to it. Again, it's really common for student housing, so a lot of these properties do this all the time. It's also worth noting that a lot of these properties, because they rent mostly to Georgia Tech students, they are really used to working with international students and graduate students, and are, they're not going to ask for an I-20 and other things, which is great. So before we get into questions, I do just want to remind y'all once more, again, we have that off-campus housing fair next week. It's on Tuesday on Tech Walkway between the Student Center and Clough. We are likely to have more than 20 properties from around, and a couple of other resources coming that are like just helpful for students who might be moving off campus. So we really, really hope you can come by and connect with properties there. There is also our Renting 101 workshop coming up next Thursday, and that's virtual. We're going to put the link on the housing website where you would have also found this. I believe we also linked it in the text that you got this morning. So that's next Thursday. You'll see this face again. We will talk about some of this, but a lot of it in more detail, and a few other aspects of first-time renting that we didn't cover today. So if you liked what you heard today, please come back for Renting 101 next week. It's going to be virtual, so you could watch that after the fact if you needed. So I see that we have gotten a couple of questions teed up, and so my colleague Allison's going to join us and help work through these and answer as many as we can.
Hi, everyone. Okay, Kate, we're gonna start with the question everyone is asking. How much does the wait list move? What is our percentage of getting off the wait list? And what has that number looked like in past years?
Yep. So in past years, it again, it varies based on quite a few factors, and a big one of them is first year enrollment. And we still don't know what next year's total first year enrollment is going to be, and that could be a swing of a couple hundred, which really does make an impact. So I do want to preface that like previous year's numbers don't necessarily mean much. But in previous years, we've seen anything from 30 to like 65% of students who are on the wait list get off. And again, that depends on cancellation and other things. Again, we know some of you are just going to wait on the wait list until July, even though you maybe already have a lease signed. And when you do that, then everybody else who's waiting, like just y'all are just bottlenecking yourselves. So we do, like, I want y'all to know that that's what we see happening. So if you are waiting, know that you are likely not the only one. And so if you haven't looked at any other options, you really do need to start. And if you have and you have a lease, please let us know and just cancel, because it'll make your peers' day, not even for our sake, for their sake. So again, that's 30 to 65% varies hugely, and we don't know what that percentage is going to be for this next year. So right now we have more than 2,500 students on the list, and it's likely to grow still a little bit at least. So depending on where you are in that number, depending on where your preferred roommates are on the list and other things, we really hope that you will at least think about and consider off-campus options. Again, the sooner that you lock down a lease, the cheaper it's likely to be. And so there's no definitive number I can give y'all. I can't say like, if you're number 1,140 or less, like we can't give you any kind of certainty along those lines. So I know that is what you had hoped to get today, and that's the one thing that we wish we could give you ourselves but can't. So Allison, did I answer that as vaguely? I'm sorry, y'all, as vaguely as possible?
Yeah. Talking about the priority consideration request form, couple parts to this. How will they be able to access it? Will it be sent via email or in the My Housing portal? Then when will they get notified? Would it be before summer? Does that make any difference if they're receiving their housing from that request form?
Okay, so the form typically should be at the end of this month. There's just a little bit more that we need to settle. Again, like getting the wait list kind of chilled out and settled. And so that's typically the end of the March that we send that out. We will send it out to everybody who's on the wait list. It'll likely be email and text. Jennifer, please chime in for me, because I'm not sure if it is something that we do in the My Housing portal or if it has been a Qualtrics survey in the past. Either seem likely. I know we have used both those methods.
It's not in the portal, it's outside. It's on our website through the website.
Yeah, so it'll be a survey link that we send you then, not in the My Housing survey. And you don't need to fill it out the very second you get it. Like, order of filling it out is not going to affect your priority by any stretch of the means. As far as the question about will this maybe come to fruition over the summer? Yeah, the list typically does not move until summer. And so so many of you this is why we encourage you to check your email regularly over the summer and update your contact information if it changes over the summer, because summer is when we are likely to say, hey, you're getting off the wait list. Here's your room. Yeah. Did I get all the parts of that?
I think so. If the student is on the wait list and gets a traditional bed space, do they have the option to reject that traditional bed space without penalty, financial penalty? And also, if they are in the traditional bed space, will they have a roommate?
If they're in the traditional bed space, they will have a roommate. And I believe that roommate will not be a first year. As far as rejecting it, you can, depending on when you reject it, there may be a penalty. I believe the cancellation penalty takes effect July 1st. So if it's July 2nd and we say, hey, we have a room for you in Glen, and you don't want it, you don't accept that, then you would be charged the penalty. So I would say July 1 is another like good deadline. If you haven't canceled that, like at that point, that's when a fee would
Hey,
start.
we will give everyone 5 days from when we notify them
Okay.
to accept or reject the assignment.
Okay. Yeah. So if we did give you, like, again, it was like July 2nd or whatever, you would have until the 7th to tell us whether or not you wanted to keep it. And if you don't, we'll move on and offer it to the next student. And Jennifer, would somebody then go to the back of the wait list then, or be off the wait list if they rejected that offer?
Yes, if they don't want that, well, they have the ability, yes, to stay on the wait list if they want to stay on there. We kind of work on it by individual circumstances at that point. Yes.
Great. Yeah, because if we're offering you a traditional bed, it's not likely that there'll be apartments coming soon. All right, Allison, what's next?
I am a current resident and on the wait list for next year. I was wondering if I could transfer to a new apartment type, such as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath to a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. I'm going to assume this is a graduate student.
If you get a space, and if you wanted a 1-bedroom, and when the time comes to choose a room and there is a 1-bedroom available, you could hypothetically choose it. I would say number wise, you're not likely to see that happen. It is theoretically possible though.
Another grad question. The student will be graduating in the fall. Are there options for 1-semester leases at places that are off campus?
Yeah, so one of the things that you can filter by, bear with me while I back us up here. One of the things that you can filter by on the off-campus housing website is lease term. And so you can ask, I think it's on here. Yeah, so down here at the bottom, you see lease length, temporary, 3-month, semester, and 12-month. So 12-month and semester is the most common. Most of the temporary leases is like subleases and other kind of things. And 3 months, there are a few folks who offer the 3 months, but if you just need a semester, it's possible. And then also keep in mind that there's the subleasing option on that page. That subleasing link, again, that would be, so like if somebody had a full year lease and then they decide to study abroad in the spring, they could sublease out to you for just the spring. So that's another way that you could look.
If me and my roommate on an on-campus apartment are currently on the wait list, if my roommate gets off the wait list before me, can this student also be taken off the wait list with him since they are a roommate pair?
Unfortunately, no. Your roommate pair doesn't, like, I know y'all have decided to be roommates, but in our system, you have to be off the wait list to even be like exist and linked as roommates. So unfortunately, no. And so for y'all, if one of y'all's number is like really low, y'all should definitely look at off-campus housing and start looking now. Yeah. And then again, it'll make somebody's day when both of y'all potentially find elsewhere and leave.
In the same vein, if a friend is not on the wait list, already has a spot on campus, and is saving a spot for them, is there a possibility they can room with them if they come off the wait list?
Again, theoretically, but not any kind of guarantee. It would really require you getting off the wait list, and whoever, if somebody like someone else has likely already been placed there, and y'all would have to swap during the room swap period that's later in the summer. Or is that even still open at that point for them, Jennifer? I don't know that that is possible for an upper class student.
To to do a roommate search, that
No,
is,
the room swap.
oh, room swap, it will be open after self-assign.
Okay. So yeah, that would be later in the summer where you could potentially do that. But that would be the circumstances in which that roommate could bring someone else in. So if you're like, I want your to manage your roommate's expectation that like they may want that spot to remain open for you, but we can't give them dibs on that spot. So if there's somebody else who comes off the wait list who gets assigned there and they want to stay there, it's theirs.
We have a few questions about the Georgia Tech Honors Program. How does being on the wait list affect their access to 8th Street housing and their place on the wait list?
Allison, can you answer that one better than me? You may be able to.
Possibly. So any of our honors program students that are currently on the wait list should be able to see both their general waitlist number and their honors program waitlist number. We will only place honors program students in 8th Street designated honors program rooms. So our assignments team does a really great job if a bed space opens up in an honors space, filling it with an honors student. You can also take first available. So if you come up on the wait list and there is not an honors space available, you can take elsewhere on campus. But we will always work through that list to put honor students in that space. Jennifer, is there anything else that we should add to that?
Nope, I believe you can see both of them now, if you log into the My Housing portal.
Does gender inclusive housing have a different wait list?
I don't believe so.
It,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it does, right?
yes,
Yeah. Gender inclusive housing, and then like outside of that, you would be on a like male or female wait list. So that's a great question that I should remember.
If I'm accepted to the BSMS program, will I be eligible for graduate housing?
Yeah, and that's well, so if you are graduating this spring and starting your master's in the fall, you're eligible for graduate housing, but you do need to wait until you are classified as a graduate in Banner, which could take some time. So keep an eye out for that because we do save some spots in grad housing for new graduates, and at that point you're a new graduate. But until you are a graduate in Banner, you can't apply for, like, our system doesn't recognize you as a graduate student to apply for that housing. So you are eligible for that if you are starting your master's in the fall. If you are graduating next fall and starting your master's in the spring, you're eligible for undergrad housing, and you have the option to stay in that same housing for the full year. And then in some cases, we are able to move you into like graduate housing in the spring if space allows. But if you are, that's if you're starting your master's in the spring. There is a great knowledge article about what it means for a BSMS that I'm hoping Nina will be able to drop in response to that question. So.
Can you repeat how long the wait list is currently? I think we had some students that joined afterwards that are asking how long the current wait list is.
Right now it's a little over 2,500. I haven't checked it like since this morning. So so it's not actually quite as high as it was last year, which we're hoping means that a lot of students like who were thinking they were ready for off-campus housing went ahead and made that choice. So hopefully that means better movement. So.
Let's see. I had a really great grad question and I'm trying to find it again. I apologize. Oh, for family housing, are there different wait list for single or double rooms?
Jennifer would know that question better than I. Y'all, Jennifer is part of our housing assignments team, and I appreciate having her here to cover my gaps in knowledge.
so sorry, what was the question?
For family housing, are there different wait lists for single and double bedrooms?
No, it's just one wait list.
How does it work if someone is on the gender inclusive list?
If someone's on the gender inclusive wait list, that just means the order of getting a space, or like when they are put in a space, they would only be put in a space that's open in a gender inclusive coded room. So that is just means that the roommate set is done without gender. So it's really just about who you could end up rooming with, because if there's one space in an apartment with 3 other people who chose gender neutral housing, then the only person who could go in there is a gender neutral, like identified person. So
Just to follow up,
like
reading through this.
someone who has opted for gender inclusive housing. Sorry, let me be clear.
And so I just want to reading the question again. If you are a male student but have opted into gender inclusive housing, if a male space opens up, you are not considered for that space. You are only considered for those gender inclusive housing spaces if that is what you have opted into.
I
live.
believe that's correct, but Jennifer can shout if not.
No, that is absolutely correct.
Do we
If
know
someone wanted to change that designation, would they need to just go back into their application to change it? And would that potentially then move them down?
Yes, that would move them down and change their wait list number.
Okay.
Approximately how many spots are reserved for new graduate students in the fall? Or anything about a graduate housing waitlist? Is the graduate housing waitlist size proportionate to how many spots there are?
As far as I know, the grad wait list is much shorter. It's only a couple of hundred. And then again, the inventory for graduate students is separate. Jennifer, I don't, she can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we know exactly how many we're saving just yet. Because there's a few other numbers that we're waiting to solidify, but it's enough that
Correct.
it's like worth going for as a new grad. And again, we also know that new grads, like they don't usually find out and get all their status and all that stuff changed until like early summer even, and it really trickles in for the spring. So it's not something that like we have enough that you don't need to worry about if that doesn't happen until then.
I'm seeing a lot of honor students that do not see their honors waitlist number. Please rest assured, I will be looking into that along with Jennifer, and we will send out an email to all of our honor students tomorrow. So we won't respond to all of these questions right now, but we will look into it and let you know where to find that information tomorrow.
And I'm seeing that there's some like folks want to hear numbers, even though I can't stress enough that those numbers are in no way indicative of what's going to happen this year. But in previous years I looked at the last 2 years earlier today, and 2 years ago, 537 out of 1,550 some got on. So that was like a 30 something year. And then in the year before that, it was like 2,400 people were on the list and like 1,600 of them made it off. So that was more like 65%. So again, we have more than 2,500 now. We don't yet know how many first years we're going to have. There's many things that have yet to be ironed out for us to do this calculus.
Does changing building preference move someone down the wait list?
The building preference they list in the application, I do not believe that changes.
Correct.
Yeah. That's really that preference, because it is not likely to necessarily hold. We don't worry too much about that.
A student or a guest has asked, I see there are a few different wait lists. How does movement work for each of these different lists? Because there are multiple waitlist options.
I mean, they move in the same way, probably just at different paces or at different times of year. So again, graduates don't typically find out, like new graduates don't find out their status until later in the spring or early summer. So in terms of that waitlist getting longer or having major changes to it, that is kind of based on that. I think we have folks on our team who get called about someone's spot on the wait list every day who wishes that we could just fix the, like, deal with the wait list tomorrow. But we are waiting on most of you who are attending today to cancel to make space for somebody else, or for someone else to be able to move up the list. So it requires folks who are on the wait list canceling, folks who have housing canceling. I saw there was a question about how first years enter into this. Depending on how large our first year class, we may have to put more first years into how, like, the suites and other spaces that have typically been for upper class housing. So again, that changes our inventory for upper class housing. So there are just so many pieces that enter into it. So that's why each one moves kind of at a different pace or at a different time. But the general principle of how they move is the same.
We have a couple questions about financial aid. Someone wanted to clarify if when discussing financial aid, do you specifically mean Zell Miller and Pell?
I'm
Pell
not
grant.
talking about any kind of aid. So for some folks, it's a scholarship or, any number of other forms. So it could be your, like, federal or state financial aid, Zell Miller, what have you. It could be, you're a, whatever scholar that it's a private check that you get from some, whatever it is. For any of you who get your funding and have had your funding trickle this way in the past, where something else pays all your tuition and fees and your on-campus housing and all those things, like everything that goes to your bursar account was paid by something else, that is, like, whatever is left over that typically would have gone, or that previously would have gone to housing and dining on campus and other things, that is what now instead just gets sent to you as the remainder. And then you allocate that yourself. So you are responsible for divvying that up. I know I've heard some sad stories about students not realizing that and blowing their whole month's rent or I'm sorry, their whole semester's rent in 1 month. So it could take any number of forms, whatever form your financial aid comes in. And again, like, reach out to your financial aid counselor, or again, visit this site. The QR code that we have here has a lot of helpful FAQs from a financial aid, and an important one had to do with the cost of living adjustment form. But even to be able to connect with your financial aid counselors, or the folks in that department to find out, like, oh, should I expect that money? Like, if you're not sure if you're getting financial aid, I feel like that's a good question to ask them and be prepped for. So.
In that same vein, can the housing fees that are incorporated in tuition be used to pay for student apartment housing? And I'm assuming that they mean off-campus student apartment housing.
Um, I'm gonna say yes, but I need to clarify that, like, that housing fee that you pay, that's what you pay us, and instead you would just be paying, like, if you live on campus right now, that's what you pay housing, and so instead you would just pay that to the off-campus provider. So it's not a fee that's rolled into your tuition that you just get to opt for it to go elsewhere. It's your housing fee is actually not part of your tuition technically. So again, that's where your financial aid will go to your tuition and fees or to your tuition first. And your housing fee is not a mandatory student fee in that way. It is, like, it's our rate. So I'm sorry, I hope I haven't confused you more with that, like, you'll still have to pay the health fee and the transportation fee and those other that are mandatory fees. And that's with your tuition, and then whatever's left comes to you with financial aid. So that wouldn't include whatever has gone to pay housing previously. That whatever has gone to pay us previously would come to you. I hope that helped.
Does a student have to cancel from the waitlist prior to submitting this cost of living adjustment form with financial aid?
No, they are not tied. Yeah. So again, like, I recommend y'all look into off-campus housing options, hopefully find something you like and sign a lease ASAP, because if you can get a better deal while their incentives are still good this spring, go ahead and submit your cost of living adjustment. Everything is sorted before the summer and before the money hits your account, and that just makes your life easier. So I do recommend that. And then again, if you do find that you've done that though, like, if you have a lease and you know that you have a place and you're going to be moving towards that, then go ahead and cancel, and it'll make somebody else's day.
As an upper class student, is being an international student still a priority consideration?
Say that again.
If as an upper class student, is being an international student still considered a priority consideration with the request form?
I don't think so. I would guess that the reason that it was had to do with being part of like iHouse or a similar program. And so if you're already here, I don't think that would like retain the same kind of weight. Jennifer, does that ring true with you?
Yes, being international, you can definitely fill out that form, but that in and of itself is not something for priority. Yes.
Will students get a new waitlist number if they are passed by someone who gets housing from that priority request form?
I don't know. I'm under the impression, and again, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're number 11 and I'm number 12, and we are kind of sorting our priority, and someone else is elevated above us, that doesn't mean that I then become 12 and you become 13. That just means that they get placed before the line continues to move.
That is correct.
So they don't necessarily push you down, but the list doesn't move until the priority chunk has sorted through. So you wouldn't get a new number.
The student is a returning graduate student on the female waitlist. Would changing to GIH push their waitlist position up or down?
The GIH waitlist is likely shorter in terms of the number of people on the waitlist, but is also a smaller amount of inventory to begin with. And if you made that change, you would go to the bottom of the GIH list. Like you would be joining the end of that line. So I don't necessarily recommend like trying to play that game. I recommend you explore your off-campus housing options thoroughly. Because it won't, again, it'll bump you to the back of whatever that new line is that you're in. And the proportion of housing is not necessarily in your favor or any better.
Similar to international students being a priority consideration, out of state is also not considered a priority consideration. Just
So we haven't even finalized our priority consideration because again, we don't yet know how much inventory we even are going to have to work with. Typically it is for students of the greatest financial need. That's what I would say. And that is, we don't usually get much beyond the list of people with the greatest financial need, as determined by the federal government.
Is only having one semester left to graduate a reason to be considered for priority housing?
You should definitely fill out the form and let us know, because sometimes we need someone to fill just a fall space so that we have a space in spring. So you should let us know. No guarantee that you're going to get a spot, but you should let us know because it's possible.
A lot of this, and I'm still coming through a lot of these questions, but as Kate mentioned, we are not able to tell you what the percentage of coming off the wait list will be. We cannot tell you specifically what numbers are on specific wait list. That's not something that we're able to answer for everyone. So if you see your question has been dismissed or marked as answered, that is the reason. I don't want you to think that we are ignoring your question, but we are unfortunately unable to give specific numbers at this time.
And again, even knowing like how many will be considered for priority, we just won't know for a while. So this is why, and honestly, I would love to take this opportunity while we have so many of you actively engaged, because I really appreciate it. I would love to know what is stopping you from moving off campus. Cost we know is certainly going to be a question, but there are places listed on our site that are comparable to housing and to living on campus. And like you have to look a little bit, you got to scroll past the first few. But there is some that is cost comparable. And so I would really love to understand what else it makes you feel hesitant about moving off campus, to see what other resources we could potentially provide.
I'm sorry, Kate, for the delay. I'm just trying to find.
Oh, you're fine. I'm scrolling to the bottom to
questions.
see if anybody submits a question about what makes them. Oh, safety is a concern. Okay, so we do have some good information from GTPD about that. And again, the closer you live, the closer you live, the better more access you have to sort of GTPD and Georgia Tech's resources. And so especially some of the student housing that's directly laminated to the edge of Georgia Tech is a space where you still have a lot of that. And what GTPD really talks about, there's a handful of things that they would tell you even while you're living on campus in terms of like not leaving valuable objects in your car, not walking home alone at night, like telling someone where you're going. Some of those general safety tips that they would tell you anyway while you're on campus is the same stuff that they tell you when you live off campus. And I'll tell you, Midtown, especially near campus, there is a lot of activity and a lot of stuff happening, but it's also a lot of Georgia Tech people. And a lot of Georgia Tech police presence kind of around that area as well. And so for some folks, that's very comforting. The Midtown Neighborhood Association has its own safety force that also goes around. The West Midtown Neighborhood Association also has one. So GTPD covers, I think they go out like about a half or a full mile in kind of any direction around campus. And similarly, the Stingerette, like getting home from campus, the Stingerettes at night can go, I think, about a mile or two away from campus as well. So I see there's also questions about like lease for, or like the cost of a lease for such a small amount of time for being just 9 months or what have you, or wanting to like study abroad. It's important to know that you have that sublease option. And so if you're just here for the year and you need someone to take your place for the summer, I'm sure there's somebody who would love to have a place for just the summer, and that helps make the cost more manageable. So doing a full year's lease and then just renting out or subleasing for the summer. Georgia or Atlanta has a ton of interns come to town in the summer. So like subleasing and other things is manageable. I also see that transportation is a concern. So again, the one of the things I love about the site is you can filter by and see the transit lines and how they intersect. You can also look and see a lot of these properties have their own like bus ride or shuttle service that comes to campus, and so that's also very helpful. Some of them have like fancy bike rooms also if you want to bike to campus. I see a question about when the results of the priority form will be released. Again, I think that really won't be until summer that we are able to move on it. We certainly like look at y'all's submissions, but until we know how much inventory we have left to dole out, we don't really move on it very much. I see that we've got about 2 minutes left. Allison, is there anything else, or Nina, I know you've been scrolling through, that,
I know we've seen a couple of students with RA questions. When is the RA position release, and how many spaces will open when that occurs? And also if your roommate currently is going to be an RA, but you're on the wait list, can they wait to see about pulling you in? Your wait list.
Unless Jennifer knows the answers to the RA specific, we may need to follow up with you after the fact because I don't know all of Holly's deadlines off the top of my head.
RA roommates have already happened, and we're done with them for fall. I don't believe summer RAs have been told yet who is going to be an RA, so we still have that to go through. If you want to be a roommate with someone, we would have to wait until you get off the wait list and then see if you can do a room change with somebody through the room swap.
We also have a question about students who have medical needs and different kinds of priorities. Kate, I know you had talked about kind of what our priorities look like, but can you talk about housing as an accommodation versus housing as, sorry, my dogs, housing as a preference, or what that looks like for medical needs and having access to certain things from on-campus housing?
Yeah, I'm without getting myself too weeded in the legal jargon that is not my main bailiwick. It is just generally not classified as the kind of accommodation that merits that, because a lot of the accommodations that would be needed are able to be met in other places. It's the same thing with like folks with disabilities and such. The accommodations that are needed are able to be met in other places, in these other spaces, and I'm, forgive me because I'm definitely generalizing things, but that is why that is generally not a one of the determiners for us. I know that brings us to our full hour, and our team is going to work to answer the few remaining questions that are coming in. But we are going to call it here. And again, I hope that I'm actually going to advance once more to our last few programs that we have coming up, and really hope that y'all are able to join us for those, because those are great opportunities to learn more about this off campus. Again, we just want you to know what your options are and what you might like, so that if that is what you need, you're able to get yourself set up with it in time for classes to start next year. So y'all, we really appreciate y'all being here. We appreciate or understand how stressful this process can be, and are glad that y'all gave us some time to talk through it with you today. Thanks very much for joining us.